Ideas form. Life is a learning process. After I retired and after I had the surgery and all of this, I think I did most of the thinking about this. And most of the views that I saw, these things that come through these little almost Proustish experiences, they came after I retired from school, from teaching school, and tried to put together a story for my nephew. I find myself very weakly able to do so, but I keep trying. I did read Bloom, and now after the Gnostic book, I understand this thrust of genius. I've read a number of books on this period between roughly the 2nd century BC and the 2nd century, or the 3rd century, 4th century, even AD. This period where Christianity began to form, for Christianity is part of a more general experience that began about then under Roman rule. So I guess the 1st century BC would focus it a little bit more. And from what I read, the Romans had a nice way of doing things. When they conquered a land, the people could do pretty much as they pleased in thought. But if they made it public and gathered a crowd and were mischievous, the Romans had a good way of taking care of them. And they killed them, period. That was it. And devised very efficient ways of getting rid of these nuisances, I suppose they considered it. And so people were left with no outward existence. The Roman way was the only way, the highway, and so on. And there were constant reminders of it. I think the bloodbaths and all of that we're familiar with are simply experiences, don't go this way. But you can't keep people from thinking, you can't keep them from imagining, and I don't even think you can keep them from expressing themselves, and that's what I found about these groups of people they call Gnostics, whether in early Christianity experience, late Jewish experience, or the experiences of the Romans. For the cynics are my heroes, and I think of St. Francis as the cynic, the ultimate cynic. And we have a negative perception of that, but it isn't so. This was the ultimate philosophy. For the cynics had a purse, a knapsack. They had a pair of sandals. They had 2 layers of clothing, the typical Roman garb or Roman Greek garb, and went about existing, completely dependent for their existence on the wishes of other people. Almost defiantly saying, see, I told you so. That people didn't help people, that societies did not take care of its own, that humans were no better than the beast, for have they not the same end? It's going back to Ecclesiastes. The cynics were not evil people, they weren't anything, they were simply the simplest people who lived. Well, these were, I suppose, the ultimate of Greek thought, Alexandrian thought in the Roman world. They didn't like the Romans. I suppose, individually, they did like themselves, and they liked to tell others that. And they liked to walk about and say, show me something better. Show me that man is better than the beast. For the Roman world wasn't, I imagine. But anyway, during this period, there were a number of ways of expressing rebellion, their mischievousness, all of this stuff. And together they're called the Gnostic. The part I first looked into were Christian Gnostics. For it was just, when I learned it, it was shocking that essentially the first thing that happened when, under Constantine, who, by the way, got out of Rome in a hurry once he'd done this, established Christianity instead of this universal paganism of the Romans. Yeah, have your God, just don't bother me, and pay your taxes, I suppose. So anyway, the thought really is that people, I suppose, wished a way out. And the Romans just seemed so overbearing that there had to be something else. And people drifted into these mysticisms, into these perfect thoughts, into these dream worlds, into all of this stuff, and expressed it. And there wasn't a Christianity, there were Christianities. There were various in the first century, so far as we know, and in the second century and into the third century. There were various ways of expressing what I would call the Christian thought is simply, this life sucks. There's a better life. And the Gnostic way of doing this is that, yeah, the world outside oneself is trash, but the world within is where the potential is. And knowledge is the way to it. Gnostic, I believe, in the Greek, comes from knowing. So I have this book of a lot of it, a lot about it, a lot of what I read, but certainly it's something that I've dwelled in for my life. It's a good summary thought, and I came upon it, of course, after I retired at age 63, 64. Pretty much I was completely dispirited by the education system in this country and my part in it. And kicking mud in your face, not only was it a denigrating experience from the community I was working under, but adding insult to injury, they paid me more not to be at this school than to be in it. In that particular period, around 2003 or so, was political thought. Get rid of the teachers, good or ill, they're all trash. Well, I wasn't. And that's the story that I want to tell. I mean, that's the summary, that's the outline, that's the introduction, is I don't think myself trash. I don't know what is of value. Yes, I do. Knowledge is of value. And being given the tools of learning is of value, to me anyway. And I think in one of these stories I said being young these days does have an advantage over the life I've had. I don't think you younger people have the leadership and the goodness of the people who essentially were my parents, my teachers, all of them. The women who, simply by observing them, made me part of them. The people who came back from the war who dedicated, I think, their lives to their kids so they wouldn't have to live as they did. And in my own mind, of having to live, feeling I had to live in two completely different worlds and had to separate them. I suppose as Mr. Roberts did, he simply was able to remove the trash of living a life that he didn't want and get some sleep. He was able on occasion, or had the desire on occasion, to stand up. Not for, I don't think, for his own purposes. His purpose was just to get the hell out of there. but in some small way to rebel against authority, an authority that was evil. I think particularly of the politics today. The political situation of this country is sordid, it's horrible, it's inhuman. It's an attempt to build a Roman world. Well, that ends it. Not the world, I hope. Plenty of things to do yet. Get a book out and try to find a way to write it. There's hope always. Hope